By the end of this lecture, you will learn all the web services basic questions and answers. What are web services? They are client-server or provider-consumer applications that communicate over the network using the HTTP protocol and exchange messages using XML and various other data formats like JSON. These applications themselves, the provider and consumer, could be written in multiple languages and they could be running on different platforms like Linux, Windows, Java, EE, .NET and so on. What is the difference between SOA and web services? SOA is simply a design principle which stands for service-oriented architecture, and it defines several principles and gives guidance to develop service-oriented applications. Let's say we are building a hospital management product using SOA as our guidance. We'll define several services like patient service, doctor service, bed management service and clinical service, which can be applications on their own, and these services interact with each other as required. That is, the patient service pulls the doctor's information to schedule an appointment. Similarly, the doctor service retrieves the patient data. The patient service interacts with bed management application to see if a bed is available, and the doctor service uses the clinical service to pull the patient's clinical information. All these guidelines for SOA are defined by open bodies like W3C, OASIS and so on. SOA can be implemented using different technologies and specifications like messaging, IIOP, RPC, RMI, etc. But web services is one popular way to implement SOA for your applications, because web services use HTTP and XML, which are available in almost every platform, and web services allow our applications to be loosely coupled. That is, if patient service wants to use a different bed management service provided by a different company tomorrow, we can easily switch that when we use web services. There is not a lot of work to do. That is the big advantage of using web services over other technologies that are available. So SOA is a design principle or design guidance that's provided by open bodies, whereas web services is one popular way to implement SOA for our applications. How many types of web services are there and what are they? There are two popular ways of doing web services, the SOAP and REST. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. It uses HTTP's POST method and sends data or exchanges messages using XML. So it defines a standard XML structure that we should be using to communicate between a web service provider and consumer. REST uses HTTP again, but it not only uses the POST method, but it uses all the methods available in HTTP, and it provides a standard interface for us to perform the operations for our application. REST stands for Representational State Transfer, because we keep transferring the state of the entire application between the client and the provider. REST also supports multiple data formats. There are several other advantages of REST. You can watch the SOAP versus REST video of mine to know more differences between SOAP and REST and when to use which. So the two popular approaches are SOAP and REST. SOAP only uses the HTTP POST method and XML, whereas REST uses all the HTTP methods and it provides a standard interface for us. And also it supports multiple data formats like XML, JSON, text, etc. What are JAX-WS and JAX-RS? JAX-WS, which stands for Java API for XML based web services, is a Java EE standard to implement SOAP based web services. Just like any other standard in the Java EE space, it comes with a specification and a API. On the other hand, JAX-RS, which stands for Java API for XML based RESTful services, is a standard for implementing REST services in Java or Java EE Enterprise Edition. Again, it also has a specification and API. Oracle gives us a specification and an API. The specification is for the web services stack implementers like Apache CXF, Jersey, and so on. It is a set of rules, simple set of rules that help these web services stacks to implement these two standards. API, on the other hand, is a set of annotations that we as developers should learn to implement web services using these two standards. Once we learn these two standards, the underlying implementation like Apache CXF, Jersey doesn't matter. We can easily switch from one implementation to other if we use these standards in our application. To summarize, from this lecture, you have learned several web services basic questions and answers. You started off with what are web services? They are client provider or client server or consumer provider applications which use HTTP and exchange data. SOA is a design guidance or principle defined by open bodies like W3C and Oasis, whereas web services is one popular way of implementing SOA for your applications. There are other ways like messaging, IAOP, RPC, RMI, but web services allows applications to be loosely coupled, and that is why it is used. SOAP is one way to implement web services, and REST is another popular way of implementing web services. You can watch the SOAP versus REST video for more differences. And JAX-WS and JAX-RS are the Java standards for implementing SOAP based and RESTful web services.